British parents suddenly realized that there were American kids with severe epilepsy being treated with medical cannabis. And Billy's mother said, well, my kid is having like 1,000 fits a month and he's just a vegetable. So she couldn't get medical cannabis here. So she went to the Americas. She got cannabis there. And it's transformed him. He went from thousands of fits a month to 0 fits a month. But she's from Northern Ireland, and quite reasonably, she thought, well, I'd like my son now to grow up where his family are. So she brought him back to Britain. This was in 2018. She brought him into the country with his medical cannabis, legally prescribed in the States and Canada. And in Heathrow, they just said, you can't have it. And she said, well, if he doesn't have it, he will die. And they said, well, that's not our problem. That's a decision, the government's decision. So they took it, and he did. He went into what we call status epilepticus, having continuous seizures for hour upon hour upon hour. And they admitted him, and then maybe this was a clever decision, they admitted him to St. Thomas's Hospital. St. Thomas's Hospital is exactly across the Thames to the Houses of Parliament. So he's in St. Thomas's Hospital dying, and you've got the government on the other side of the Thames thinking, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? If he dies, the world isn't going to like it. I mean, we're killing this kid because we've taken away a legal medicine. And in the end, they changed the law, and it was the courage of his mother, that forced the law to be changed. And he got his medicine, but he had to pay for it. It took him 3 years to get it on the NHS. And the outrageous situation today is still that the vast majority of kids, and there's hundreds of kids on medical cannabis in this country, have to pay for it. There's only 6 prescriptions on the NHS.
And how do they get how did the other people get their medical cannabis in the UK?
So what happened was after the Connolly case and the law was changed to allow specialist consultants to prescribe medical cannabis. And that meant that you can get a prescription, but the NHS has another gatekeeper. So in the NHS, consultants might want to prescribe medical cannabis. Many do, but they're not allowed to by local, what we call commissioning committees or pharmacy committees. So doctors don't have the authority to prescribe what they want anymore. The other people decide what they're allowed to prescribe. So in the NHS, cannabis prescriptions have been blocked by various pressure groups, pharmacy groups, by different consultant groups. There are still plenty of doctors who don't think cannabis is a medicine. They don't believe that these kids are living because they take a medical cannabis. They think it's all placebo. And the parents say, well, that's ridiculous because they were on 7 other medicines and they didn't work. And this one, how can this one be placebo? The kids are unconscious when you start giving it because they're having so many seizures. But there's an absolute desire not to believe the truth about medical cannabis. And do you know why? So this is perhaps the worst dishonesty of all. A few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I think, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Medicine asked the head of the NHS and the chief medical officer, why weren't they rolling out medical cannabis in the UK? And the head of the NHS who's now Lord Stevens, he's left NHS England now, he said, because we think medical cannabis would be a route into recreational use. Now, when you've got a child who's dying because of thousands, that's an absolute insult.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't, even if it were or was a route into recreational use, that would not be a justification for denying it to children. I mean,
yes,
that's
clearly.
That's an appalling statement. And we know it isn't. If he had bothered to consult experts, they'd have said, no, we have a saturated market. We have a higher proportion of people using cannabis in Britain where it's illegal than in countries where it's legal. So the market is saturated. So that was a lie. That was a lie in order, probably, because that's what made him, when he went from Sir to Lord. And the other guy was the chief medical officer, Chris Whitty, who's still the chief medical officer. And Chris Whitty said, well, we have to be careful about medical cannabis. We need to do proper studies because we have to make sure it's not going to be another thalidomide. Now, many of your listeners probably won't know what thalidomide is or was. Thalidomide was a tranquilizer that was given to women who had vomiting in pregnancy, and it led to birth deformities. That was back in the 1960s. And these are the people that have very short arms and legs. It's called phocomelia. Now, of course, we really would not want any drug to cause birth deformities. But of all the drugs we have, the one which we know has been given to more pregnant women than any other is cannabis. If cannabis was going to cause problems, we'd have known it in ancient China. And so
we have a decent sample size on this one.
Enormous. And so this is and the worst thing of all, Evan, this is a technical point, is when you do clinical trials, you never give the drug to pregnant women because of the risk. So even if they'd done proper clinical trials, we wouldn't know the answer. So it's again another completely illogical response, and it's politically driven.
Yeah,
you've got to try to stop the pressure for recreational cannabis in Britain by blocking medical use. Outrageous censorship.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, really, for any drug to have the efficacy that cannabis seems to have in some cases of epilepsy. Like, when will you have 1,000 seizures a month go to zero? Like, that's astonishing. And I think in the Billy case, it was within 10 hours or something that he was already back having seizures after they were seized in Heathrow. Like, there's almost no medication in history that has that kind of efficacy. So it has to be so clear and glaring and screaming how you continue to ignore it. And like, I can understand not wanting to immediately legalize it and make it recreational and lose your political base. But the point that you're denying sick children medication is just like, oh, we're in House of Cards. Like, we're in a Netflix documentary right now. Like, we're not in real life. I can't believe we're in real life with this level of corruption.
I think, and I'm glad you touched on this point, I think the denial of medical cannabis to children, and probably adults as well, because it's not being properly tested in adults, but adults will need even more and parents can't afford it. I think this is the worst health scandal since the Bristol children's cardiac operation scandal back in the early 2000s. I am certain that tens of, maybe hundreds of children with severe epilepsy have died because they can't get the medicine, or the parents can't afford the medicine, or they don't even know about the medicine because there's no active attempts to find these kids and treat them. I think it is outrageous, and it's just proved impossible to get the government to take notice, because they go to the experts, the so-called experts, who are the pediatric neurologists, and they say, well, there's no trial data. And the politicians say, well, look at the 21 cases that my charity Drug Science published. And they say, yeah, but that's not randomized controlled trial data. And the parents say, hang on, guys, these kids before, have been on multiple drugs before, it hasn't helped. We put them on this drug and they're getting better. Now, what you want us to do, stop it and watch them get sick, like Caldwell? And they say, yes, until you prove that they need it, we don't believe. And the parents say, we're not going to do that. We can't put our children, but he could have died. You don't need that kind of evidence. They're just using that as an excuse.